Thank the gentleman for yielding. I want to start by thanking Peter King and Bob Goodlatte for their role in bringing this bill to the floor as sponsor and committee chairman. I rise in strong support of overriding the president's veto of JASTA. JASTA is a carefully crafted, narrow bill that would hold accountable foreign governments that knowingly provide substantial assistance to a designated foreign terrorist organization that launches an attack in the United States. Despite the overblown rhetoric of some critics of this bill, JASTA will not pose a threat to American military personnel or diplomats. They would be absolutely protected if another country passed legislation mirroring this bill, because JASTA applies only to governments. To the extent that a foreign government might pass broader legislation that would make American personnel subject to liability, that country would not be reciprocating. It would be engaging in a transparent and unjustifiable act of aggression. The economic, diplomatic, and military strength of the United States makes such action unlikely. And any rogue state inclined to target U.S. interests can already do so. We must not hold justice for the 9/11 families hostage to imagined fears. Mr. Speaker, 15 years ago on September 11th, we suffered the most deadly terrorist attack on our soil in this nation's history. My district in New York was the epicenter of this attack, but its effects were felt across the country, including, of course, at the Pentagon and in Pennsylvania. We all have an interest in ensuring that the 9/11 victims and their families can bring to justice anyone who is responsible for this vicious attack. JASTA simply reinstates what was understood to be the law for 30 years, that foreign states, not individuals, not soldiers, foreign states, may be brought to justice for aiding and abetting acts of international terrorism that occur on American soil, whether or not the conduct that facilitated the attack occurred in the United States. Some courts have recently held that if a foreign government agent hands over a check to al-Qaeda in a cafe in New York to fund a terrorist attack in the United States, an American court. But if that same foreign agent funds the same attack by handing over the same check in a cafe in Geneva, the government is immune from suit. That makes no sense, and it flies in the face of what had been settled law for many years. Long-standing U.S. law under the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act provides jurisdiction to sue foreign states that cause a tortious injury on American soil. That's current law. This is the international norm, and it has never prompted retaliatory conduct by other nations. This bill simply clarifies that if a foreign state murders thousands of Americans on American soil, or provides substantial assistance to a designated terrorist group that murders thousands of Americans on American soil, that government cannot hide from justice merely because its actions occurred abroad. This bill does not target any particular country or prejudge the merits of any particular case. Any government brought before a U.S. court will have every defense available to it, as well as extensive protections and government privileges during discovery to protect against disclosure of its sensitive information. What it will not be able to do is hide behind erroneous court decisions and jurisdictional loopholes to avoid the legal process altogether. We have heard a parade of horribles stemming from a hypothetical fear that other nations would use JASTA as an excuse to target American citizens would still be absolutely protected, because JASTA applies only to governments. And if a foreign government is highly unlikely to pass legislation that goes beyond JASTA. And if a rogue state does in fact authorize suits against American personnel abroad, we have a well-established process for defending such actions. According to the Office of Foreign Litigation at the Department of Justice, quote, at any given time, foreign lawyers under the direct supervision represent the United States in approximately 1,000 lawsuits pending in the courts of over 100 countries, close quote. This is not a new issue for the United States, and we are well equipped to deal with any consequences. We are warned that Saudi Arabia will be very angry if we approve this bill, that the Saudis may retaliate against the United States, may perhaps withdraw some investments. History shows that the Saudis will do what is in their interests. They need American support and American arms in a volatile Middle East where they fear and fight Iran and its proxies. They are not going to prefer their emotions to their interests and act against the United States. If the Saudi government was not complicit in the attack on 9/11, the plaintiffs will fail to prove such complicity in an American court. Justice will have been served, and the Saudis will be vindicated after years of suspicion. But if it is proven in an American court that the Saudi government was complicit in the attacks on 9/11, justice will have been served, and we, not the Saudis, will have justification to be very angry. Mr. Speaker, this bill was carefully negotiated over more than 6 years. It passed the House and Senate unanimously, and earlier today the Senate voted 97-1 to override the president's veto. All that stands in the way of justice for the 9/11 victims and their families is a vote in this House. I urge my colleagues to stand with them and to override the veto.